Welcome to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. Do you wonder how your faith fits together with your profession? Well, join us as we explore how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Well, hello and welcome to Two Roads Crossing. My name is Barry Schwenk. I'm a veterinarian, a pastor, and your host as we explore the intersection of faith and veterinary medicine. I really hope that you had an opportunity to listen to our last episode. If you haven't, it's a good reason for me to remind you to subscribe to the podcast so that way you don't miss out on any of our episodes, because today we are continuing a conversation that we started last week. And so if you haven't listened to last week's podcast, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that first. See, here at CVM, our mission is to challenge, empower, and facilitate veterinary professionals. And when we talk about veterinary professionals, it's not just veterinarians. The veterinary profession is made up of all sorts of folks, and it includes people like our veterinary technicians, our assistants, our students, our management team. We're just a part of a beautiful community that is dedicated to encouraging one another and serving our patients and our clients to the fullest. And at CVM, that's what we're about, is encouraging everyone within this profession to live out their faith as they serve others. And so last week, we started this conversation with a certified veterinary technician about missions. And I think Lindsey Abrams, here you are again joining us. I think that we started the conversation by saying, hey, I want to talk to you about missions. And then we talked for a half hour and then never actually talked. Never actually got to that point. But welcome back. It's great to see you again. How are you today?
Yes, good. Thank you so much.
I thoroughly enjoyed our last conversation, getting to know a little bit more about you and your background. And I think where we left off, we had talked about you had moved states after having some struggles and feeling a bit overwhelmed. You moved to a new state as a certified vet tech, and you were in the process of going through this healing process with God and renewing your relationship with Him and His calling in your life. And as part of that process, he directed you to a new church. He directed you to a new clinic where you're currently working on your derm specialty as a veterinary technician, which is awesome. But then there's this missions component. So can you tell me, as part of your journey, how did missions kind of come into the picture for that first time? How did you know that God was directing you in down that path?
Yeah. So I've always been interested in missions, and I just wasn't sure where to go to do missions and like what type of organization. And obviously I love animals, so I thought it'd be really cool if I could do some type of mission trip with animals, and I didn't know CVM existed. So
we get that a lot. Story. It's okay.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Yeah. I was actually at a church service where we had this pastor come in, and his whole message was talking about finding his purpose. And while I found, my purpose in life was working in veterinary medicine, it was through that message that God spoke to me, and He was like, your purpose is to not only serve clientele and pets in clinic, but also outside. So in different states, and it's funny because through that message, the pastor, he looked directly at me and he's like, it's your time. Like now is your time. And God was like, yes, like, now it's your time to go on missions. And I'm just like, well, I don't know where to begin. So following that service, it was maybe a week or two. I was attending an online veterinary conference because it was during COVID, and CVM was listed on the agenda. They had a devotional breakfast. And so I attended that, and I just fell in love with everything that they were talking about. And I was able to research CVM more and saw that, they do short-term missions here in the United States, but they also do outside of the United States. And when I was looking through the short-term missions, I saw that they go to South Dakota, and I'm like, well, this is amazing because that's where I came from. I was born and raised in South Dakota.
Hold on, because hold on. So we talked last week about in your life feeling kind of overwhelmed and burdened and kind of in this dark place, and so you moved to Minnesota. But now you're talking about going on a mission trip back to the place where you're from. Okay.
Yes.
All right. I just want to make sure, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. Okay.
Yeah. So very funny how that all worked out. Huh. And so I saw that, and I'm just like, well, this would be an amazing opportunity to go back to South Dakota. I was able to go back there healed and delivered and restored from all the hurt. And so that following May, so May of 2021, I did my first mission trip with CVM out to South Dakota to the reservation out there. And it was a very it's kind of emotional going back, just where all the hurt was. But I decided, no, we're not gonna think about that, so instead, I shifted my perspective, and I'm like, God, what do you want me to do here? Like, how do you want me to help and reach the people that are here that are hurt? And so in turning that around and being able to ask God that, he was able to move, and I was able to see God work through conversation and relationship. And I had found salvation back in Minnesota. I was able to rededicate my life in doing that. And with the restored relationship, I was able to then turn people to maybe even rebuild or know Jesus completely through that trip. And so there were quite a few salvations. I can't remember how many there were, but it's just really cool to see God move.
Okay, so there are so many questions going through my head right now, and so that was just a couple of minutes of a statement from you, and my mind is reeling. Okay, so first of all, when you stumble across CVM, and especially at that first going to that first prayer breakfast, what was that like for you in your spiritual healing process and journey? What was it like finding an organization like CVM?
I thought it was so cool that there was a platform that was Christian based, but also veterinary based, because prior to knowing CVM, I was struggling in my field. How can these two things be intertwined? And so finding CVM and realizing, yes, you can have both things. That just opened my eyes to all the possibilities.
There's a lot of us, that go through life trying to walk down two parallel roads. You keep jumping back and forth between these two things. There's where God, it's your faith journey and then your professional journey. And yet as Christians, we know that God is in both, but finding that place where they intersect can be really challenging. But then when you do, it's like the scales fall off your eyes and the light bulb,
Yeah.
it's like the ray of sunshine comes down. You're like, oh, here it is. So, all right. So you figure out that there are other veterinary professionals that are out there that are struggling with the same types of issues, have the same questions about their faith walk and their professional walk. And so it's at a time and a place where it can be really encouraging for you. But you specifically are looking for the something to point you that this pastor who, how dare he look right at you when he say that? How
I'm
dare
just like, me? I'm like, me?
And there you are with those.
That's never happened to me before. I'm just like, I think you might have the wrong person.
You turn around, look behind you, and
Yeah.
so but it's cool because, like, in our last conversation, we talked about you wanting to become wanting to learn how to become more dependent on God and less dependent on others. And as part of this journey and part of this process, he continues to take you to these new places and these new opportunities for you to trust him. And so when you pulled up that list on CVMs, and anyone can do this, right? At www.cvm.org, go to short-term missions. You can click on it. There's a whole list of short-term mission opportunities. And out of all of them, your eyes go straight to the place of your initial hurt and brokenness.
Yeah.
What was that like seeing it for the first time? And then what was that like when you talked to your husband and pastor about it?
Yeah. Yeah. um yeah, so I saw it, and God was like, this is the place I'm sending you.
Hmm.
And talked to my husband pastor about it, and they're like, absolutely.
Hmm.
You've come so far, you've grown so much. Now it's your time to go back and help others heal
Hmm.
and to know the Lord.
Hmm.
So I'm just like, all right, here we go.
Hmm.
And wasn't sure, what to expect for my first mission trip. I feel like there was certain things that helped me prepare, but you just never know what's gonna happen. And I do feel like the trip went really great. All the people that I met were so amazing, the CVM team. And then also, you just don't know how the locals are gonna kind of interact with a team coming in from the outside. And one thing that really stuck out to me was one of the leaders said, we haven't been here for a couple years, 2 or 3 years, because it had been COVID. And they said they couldn't believe how all the people, how welcoming they were and how happy they were that we were there to help them and their pets. And they're like, generally it's not like this, generally there's not relationship. It's harder. It was harder. But I think because people were so hurt and they were hunkered down and shut off the outside world during COVID, that they were hungry for relationship and something new. And so it was really cool to see that. And you didn't necessarily have to engage with the people. The people wanted to know why we were there. Obviously we were there to help their pet, but they wanted to know more.
Mm.
And so it was very easy to have conversation with them, although I was a little nervous to start it on my own, you know. And I actually ended up meeting one of the, not meeting, but building more of a relationship with one of the veterinarians that was on the team there. And through talking with her and building relationship with her and seeing how she interacted with a lot of the people there, that was really eye-opening to me. And it really opened up my heart and my mind to like, okay, you know, don't think this way, think this way, you know, like you're here doing the Lord's work. And you know, even though you might be a little shy or timid, you know, God's gonna make it work out for his good. So that was just really cool to see how everything played out.
Who was that on your trip?
That was Dr. Nancy Moore.
The infamous Dr. Nancy Moore. And I am working really hard at getting her on this podcast. I've got to find a time because it seems like she never sleeps, but she also finding time to talk with her because that type of mentorship is so vitally important, and she does such a great job. Great job with it. Her heart is beautifully inclined in that direction. I can't wait to maybe visit with her about that. So tell me, for those who maybe are not as familiar, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is you're going on this mission trip to South Dakota, working on a Native American reservation. What's the primary tasks and goals that are kind of associated with that type of trip? Are you what kind of medicine are you practicing? What are the objectives kind of in a trip like that?
Yeah, so we did a lot of small animals, so cats and dogs, and we just focused on wellness care, so deworming, flea tick prevention, and then vaccines. And I will say we were never bored. We were busy the whole time, from early morning to late at night. We were, we'd wake up in the morning, we would meet, talk about plans for the day. We would do devotional prayer, have breakfast, and then we'd get up, set up for the day. If we weren't already in that location, then we'd have to travel a little ways. But yeah, it was just nonstop busy throughout the whole day. I believe that trip we saw it was over 500 pets in like 4 days. Wow. So it was just constant, like in and out. But it was really important, in those in and out moments, where we take the time and actually talk with the people. Like I said, they were very talkful, and there was, more people like CVM members there that were able to like talk with them too. But yeah, you also had to kind of take that into consideration. Like, we're not just here to, do wellness care. Like we're here to spread the love of Jesus and tell them, the good news of the gospel. And so it was, that was something that I struggled a little bit at first, like, and I kind of like took a step back. I'm like, well, what am I actually here for? So you just gotta remember to slow down and remember, what you're there for.
And that's a great, well, first of all, for some people who are listening, the idea that we have a mission trip that is primarily small animal related. So any of you vet techs, veterinarians, vet assistants who are thinking that you can't participate in missions because you're not a large animal person, aha, gotcha. So you can sign up now, www.cvm.org, short-term missions. So that's a good thing. But also, because as you were talking about it, it sounds like every day at the clinic for me, right? It just sounds like you show up and then there's just this string. And for some reason, if I don't get a chart written from my 9 a.m. appointment and I'm sitting down at 3 p.m., sometimes it's really hard for me to remember who that was, because
Yes.
you get so consumed and lost moment to moment. Is that kind of how it sounded like that's kind of how the mission trip felt like in the beginning for you?
In the beginning, yeah. And like I said, I was kind of able to step back, and that's when Dr. Moore came into play too. She's like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And I'm like, well, it kind of just feels like another day at work. And she's like, oh no. Oh no. Because I saw her, evangelizing, and I'm just like, how do I get that? And I was getting little pieces here and there, but I wanted more. And so I was able to team up with her, and I'm just like, all right, yes.
Well, and so when you show up, was part of that timidity also part of just being back in that place where you had come from, or was it just, or did that not have anything to do with it?
I don't think so. I don't think it came from that. It was just kind of more of like an unfamiliar place, and being told, like there's a lot of crime and a lot of like trafficking and stuff that goes on, so be careful, be cautious, know your surrounding type thing. So I think it was more so just I don't want to say fear of the unknown, but unknown, like things, it's real, things that happen here, it's real, so.
Well, that was part of why the pastor was looking at you, right? It was God was taking you out of what you were comfortable with and familiar with, and sending you someplace, even though it kind of had the same name as a place where you had been, you're entering into it as a different person in a different situation. And even that can be a little disconcerting. How did those conversations with Dr. Moore, how did that begin to change your perspective, not just on the mission trip, but now beyond the mission trip too?
Yeah. So something that I always longed for was, when people look at me, I want them to see the love of Christ. And that was something that I saw in Dr. Moore. And I could start getting teary-eyed. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
And when I met her, like, I'm just like, yeah, like I want that. I want that. And just being able to see how she interacts with people and how she loves people through that mentorship. I had great mentorship and discipleship with my church and my pastor, but to actually be able to relate to people who've been through things, who've been hurt, how to know how to do that. She just played a big role in that for me.
Yeah. It's hard sometimes to know, we only talked for a half hour. I mean, your story is this is the condensed version, right? And it's hard to know after living a lifetime, knowing how to put into perspective all the things that God has done for you, and what you're supposed to do with that. You can reflect on God's goodness and his blessing, but then how does that change the way that I interact with the people around me? How does that change me at home, me at the clinic, me at church? How does that pour out of me? God has poured so much into me. How does that pour out? And it sounds like you started to kind of find, this whole thing has been about your journey of learning how to depend on God.
Yeah.
And here again, you're right back at that place where God is showing, if you just trust me, the things that I've done for you, I can also do through you. Um, when you come back home after a trip like that, what was that reentry period like for you with your husband and with your church and your clinic and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I definitely was on fire for God. My mission was everybody needs to hear the good news.
Good.
So that was definitely a big part that kind of changed. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't scared to share the gospel. And I don't think I was prior, but I was just more like on fire and like, this is important. So, but also there was a sense of coming from a place that was so impoverished and seeing how a lot of the people live there. It made me really grateful and thankful for the things that I have. So, that was just really eye-opening to me that people live so poorly here in the United States. And, it's so easy to take the things that we have for granted because we just don't truly know. And so that too also switched my perspective, like I don't complain about things that I used to complain about. Like, well, I wish I had this car. Well, I'm so thankful I just have a car,
Right.
like, I wish I lived in that house, but actually I'm so grateful and thankful for the house that I do have, I have a job that, we can pay for things and, we're not without. So that also too just gave me new perspective on things.
Was there like a moment or a story from your trip that really kind of brought things together, like a moment of um, your professional life and your spiritual life that kind of collided?
Yes. So it was on my second trip with CVM out back to South Dakota.
I didn't even have to ask that question. I just assumed. Yeah.
Yep. So second trip out. I think it was like the second or third day into the trip. Everything was going great. And, there was this younger woman that showed up and she had this box litter of puppies. And I saw that they were German Shepherd puppies. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just love German Shepherds so much. Like, I need to see these puppies. Give me all the puppies. And so we were just talking and I'm just like, these guys look kind of itchy and they have some hair loss going on. Like, I think they might have mange. And sure enough, yes, they did.
There you go.
So, God brought me a germ case, which was amazing. And so I was able to talk with the owner and tell her, like, this is what's going on. And this is, how we, how it's treated and this and that. And, through talking through that, I asked her, I'm like, have you ever been to a CVM clinic before? And she's like, no, this is actually my first time. And I'm like, that's so cool. I'm so glad you're here. And she wanted to know more about CVM. And so I was able to share with her about the Lord. And in doing that, she actually gave her life to Christ. And so that was such a special moment for me. And And we actually still have like relationship and friendship today to that point. So yeah, very special.
I am humbled by the way that God uses itchy dogs in your life. And
I know.
you know, the confirmation of where you are must be it must feel really good to know that you're in that place where God wants you, and just seeing
Yeah.
him. If you know, for folks that are listening, what kind of advice can you give to people that may be hurting the way that you had been hurt, or those that are, seeking professional direction, trying to learn how to be more dependent on God? What are some of the things, the big takeaways that, as you reflect on your time in missions and this intersection of your faith and vocation, what's some of the advice that you might give to someone who's listening?
Yeah. Just want you to know that you're not alone, and that even though you may be the only believer in your workplace, God can use that and he can change it. He can change your situation. I feel like the veterinary profession has sort of a bad stigma with like burnout and a lot of mental health things. And I think, a lot of the struggle comes from not knowing Christ, not knowing Jesus personally. And so my advice is, if you know Jesus personally, be that light for the people that you work with. That God has so much in store for you, and your story's not over, and good things are to come. And if he can do it in my life, I know he can do it in yours too. And just don't give up. Keep pursuing. Trust him with all of your heart, and he'll make a way for you.
I could not have said it better myself. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today, Lindsey, and last week as well. You're going to have to, after your next mission trip, you're going to have to give me a call, and we're going to have to talk about that one too, because I'm excited to hear what's in that next chapter. I want to see what the next itchy dog does, because it seems like God has a way of using those for his glory. So thank you. And for everyone who's listening, hopefully the things that you hear in Lindsey's story can resonate with your life as well. God may have to use a pastor to look directly at you to get you up and moving again, to get you pointed in the right direction, whatever it is. But whatever hurt is in your life is no match for the healing that he wants to bring, and the light that he is going to fan into existence in your heart as you allow him just to speak to you, and for his presence just to be felt. And as you pursue him, God's promise that he will be found if you seek him. Whether this is it seems beyond reach or not, it doesn't matter. God will take care of it if you only trust him and you go all in. And so I would encourage you to take that next step wherever it is that God is calling you, leading you, directing you. There are men and women, there are veterinarians and veterinary technicians that have similar stories, that are willing to come alongside you to help you to find that next place in your relationship with God. Because as you learn to trust him and as you learn to walk in obedience, together we're learning how to live well at the intersection of two roads crossing.
Thank you for listening to Two Roads Crossing, a podcast production of the Christian Veterinary Mission. If you were blessed by this content, like and subscribe so that you are alerted when new content is released. If you would like more information about CVM, or if you have questions, comments, or topical suggestions, You can find us online at www.cvm.org. Or you can contact us by emailing podcast@cvm.org. God has a plan for the nations, and that plan includes you. We pray that CVM has encouraged you to live out your calling with confidence and competence. So, until next time, may the voice of the shepherd ring loud and clear as you follow him in faith to the intersection of two roads crossing.